So you guys wanted to know more about what's really going on with crime in Oakland. Is it really as crazy as some people say? We took a deep dive into this intense video report from independent journalist Darren Stalkup. He actually spent time on the streets of Oakland talking to residents, and let me tell you, it gets real.
Oh, wow. This is the one where he, like, embeds himself in the city, right?
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't hold back. Like, right off the bat, he hits us with these super alarming crime stats. Robberies are up 38%, burglaries up 23%, and get this, car thefts are up by, like, 44%.
Oh, wow.
And you know it's bad when even an Oakland In-N-Out has to shut down after 75 years because of crime.
Seriously. And In-N-Out, if they can't make it there, that's wild. I mean, that really makes you think about what it's actually like every day for the people living and working in Oakland, you know?
Totally. And the thing is, Stalkup doesn't just, like, throw stats at us and call it a day. He takes us right to the heart of it all, you know? Like, one of the first things we see are these huge homeless encampments sprawled out right next to the freeways, just overflowing with trash and, well, you get the picture.
Yeah, it's that kind of stark reality that you don't always get from just reading the news.
For real. And
Yeah.
throughout the whole video, you just get this feeling of tension. Like, Stalkup and his guide keep mentioning how they have to be really careful, especially around young people who might have guns.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to weigh on you, always having to watch your back like that. That's where having that local guide's perspective is so important, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. He can pick up on things that Stalkup, as an outsider, just wouldn't even notice. Like, there's this one part where they visit an area known for, prostitution and drug use.
Oh, wow.
And they actually talk to some of the sex workers there, as well as a business owner who has a shop nearby. So we're getting both sides of the coin. You know?
Like, I feel like that's where it gets really interesting, right? It's easy to make judgments about a place based on what you hear, but when you actually hear from the people who are living it, it adds a whole other layer of understanding.
Exactly. And that's where things start to shift in the video. We start with these crazy crime stats, but spending time with these Oakland residents, it becomes less about what's happening and more about why.
Getting to those root causes.
Yes. And that's where things get really interesting.
And getting to those root causes, it's like, you need to understand, like, the history of Oakland, you know?
Totally.
And Stalkup, he talks to this local activist, Jolie Zardovic. She does such a good job connecting what's going on now with Oakland's past.
Right. Like, she goes all the way back to the crack epidemic in the 80s and how much it devastated, like, Black communities in Oakland, right?
Yeah. And the displacement, the poverty, all these systemic issues that are still playing out today. She connects all of that.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. And, you know, she's not afraid to say what she thinks. Like, she even argues that some of the things we call crime, she's talking about, like, someone stealing from Target. Right?
Yeah.
She's saying that's not really crime when people are desperate and they don't have any other options. She calls it acts of survival.
That's a really thought-provoking way to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you question, when does something become a crime if it's about survival?
Exactly. It's like, where do we draw that line? And it makes you think about these big corporations. Like, what's their responsibility in all of this?
Yeah, it's definitely not so black and white anymore.
Right. And you know what else I thought was interesting? Later on, this Stalkup's guy, remember, he's a Black man from Oakland.
Right.
He says he thinks everyone in Oakland pretty much gets treated the same, you know, no matter their race. But then Zardovic, she's Black too, and she totally disagrees.
It's so interesting how two people can experience the same place so differently.
Right. It just shows you how much lived experience shapes how you see the world.
For sure. Like, there's not always one right answer when it comes to stuff like this. It's about understanding all those different realities. It really gets you thinking, you know, all these different sides to the story. But there's this one part, towards the end of the video, it kind of stuck with me. Stalkup takes us to this, like, abandoned playground, right? It's supposed to be one of those places where, you know, kids can just be kids, swing on the swings, go down the slide.
So you picture it all bright and colorful, full of laughter.
Exactly. But in the video, it's like, it's depressing, man. Totally deserted, trashed, broken glass everywhere, even needles just lying around.
Oh, wow.
It's rough. And it's like this powerful image, you know, like a metaphor for how these problems in Oakland are hitting the most vulnerable the hardest.
Yeah, it's not just statistics anymore. It's about real people, real lives being impacted.
And it gets you thinking, like, what happens to those kids? You know, the ones who should be out there playing, what's their future going to look like?
Right. Where do they even go from here?
Exactly. And then it becomes even bigger, right? It makes you think about the future of Oakland itself.
Is there a way back?
Right. Can things even change?
I feel like that's what Stalkup wants us to think about. It's not about easy answers. He's not pretending he has them all, But he wants us to stay engaged, to grapple with the hard questions, you know?
It's a call to action, for sure. So where does this leave us? We took this deep dive into one journalist's experience, and wow, it showed us how complicated it all really is, right?
Yeah, it reminds you that there's always more to the story than the headlines. You got to hear from the people living it, experiencing it firsthand.
Totally.
Mm.
And even then, there's still more to uncover. The Starkup's video focused on the stuff you can't ignore. The crime, the homelessness.
Right.
But what about the struggles you don't see? The families barely scraping by, the small businesses hanging on by a thread, the people working every day to make a difference. What about them?
It makes you think. And that's the point of these deep dives, isn't it? It's about asking those questions, sparking that curiosity. So what are you going to do with this information? What other questions are you going to ask? Where are you going to go from here? That's what we want you to take away from this. There's always more to learn, always more to explore.